Back off now, single dad's warning to drug dealers exposed his undercover detective past. But the moment he shouted those words, the whole town discovered he wasn't just a father, he was the one man every criminal feared. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn evening cast long shadows across the high school parking lot as Jack Malone sat in his weathered blue pickup truck. The engine was off, but his eyes remained alert, scanning the surroundings out of old habit. Through the school's large windows, he could see the choir room where Lily practiced, her voice joining others in distant melody. Jack's calloused fingers drummed against the steering wheel as he waited. The familiar weight of responsibility pressed down on his shoulders, making him feel every one of his 50-plus years. His dark hair, peppered with gray at the temples, caught the fading sunlight as he adjusted the rearview mirror. 3 young men in dark hoodies appeared at the corner of his vision, lounging against the chain-link fence that bordered the school property. They couldn't have been more than 17 or 18, but something about their posture made Jack's neck prickle. Years of experience had taught him to read body language, and these boys weren't here for after-school activities. He watched as they passed something between them, small and quick, vanishing into pockets before anyone could get a good look. Jack's jaw tightened. He'd seen enough drug deals to recognize one, even from a distance. The choir practice was ending. Students began filtering out of the building, their chatter and laughter carrying across the parking lot. Jack sat up straighter when he spotted Lily's familiar figure emerging through the double doors. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she clutched her sheet music to her chest as she walked with a friend. One of the boys by the fence noticed her too. He elbowed his companions and whispered something that made them snicker. Then came the sharp whistle, the kind that made Jack's blood boil. Without conscious thought, Jack was out of his truck. His movements were fluid, purposeful, as he crossed the parking lot. Years of training took over. The way he positioned himself, how he assessed potential threats, the careful distance he maintained. "Hey!" The word came out like a whip crack. The boys turned, their smirks faltering as they took in Jack's approach. Lily stopped walking, her eyes widening as she recognized her father. "Dad?" she called out, her voice uncertain. Jack didn't turn to look at her. His focus remained locked on the 3 teens, who were now shifting uncomfortably under his steady gaze. He could see them more clearly now. One tall and lanky, another stocky with a scraggly beard, and the third wearing a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. "This isn't your hangout," Jack said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that came from years of giving orders that had to be obeyed. "And that whistle?" He took another step forward. "That was your first and last mistake." The tall one tried to laugh it off. "Chill, old man. We're just—" "Back off now." Jack cut him off, each word precise and sharp as a blade. "Or you'll regret it." Something in his tone, perhaps the absolute certainty in it, or maybe the hint of contained violence, made the boys take a collective step backward. Jack hadn't raised his voice or made any threatening moves, but the power of his presence seemed to fill the space between them. The one in the baseball cap swallowed hard. "Come on, guys," he muttered to his friends. "Let's bounce." They tried to maintain their tough facade as they walked away, but their quick glances back at Jack betrayed their unease. He watched them until they turned the corner and disappeared from sight. When Jack finally turned around, he found Lily staring at him, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and something else, something that looked almost like pride. Her friend had already scurried away, leaving them alone in the growing dusk. "Dad," Lily started to say, but Jack was already walking back to the truck. "Time to go home, sweetheart," he said quietly. The drive home was filled with heavy silence. Jack's hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, his knuckles white with tension. The slight tremor in his fingers didn't escape Lily's notice. She kept stealing glances at him from the passenger seat, her brow furrowed in concern. The truck's engine hummed steadily as they navigated the familiar streets of their neighborhood. Houses with warm-lit windows passed by like a slideshow of normal family lives. Jack forced himself to breathe evenly, to push down the flood of memories threatening to surface. Lily shifted in her seat, clutching her sheet music closer. She opened her mouth several times as if to speak, but each time thought better of it. Instead, she watched her father's face in profile, noting the tight set of his jaw, the the distant look in his eyes that suggested he was seeing something far beyond the road ahead. There was something about him in that moment, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. It was like looking at a photograph and suddenly noticing details in the background that had always been there but never registered before. Her father had always been quiet, steady, protective. But today, she'd glimpsed something else, a shadow of someone she didn't know, someone with hard edges and hidden depths. The silence stretched between them like a living thing, full of unasked questions and unspoken words. The trembling in Jack's hands hadn't stopped, and Lily found herself wondering what memories or ghosts had been stirred up by that confrontation in the parking lot. She'd never seen her father like this before, or maybe she had, but she'd been too young to understand what she was seeing. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with sunlight streaming through the maple trees that lined Cedar Street. Jack was retrieving his morning paper when Mrs. Henderson, his elderly neighbor, came rushing across her well-manicured lawn in her pink quilted robe. Jack, you simply must see this." She waved her phone at him, her silver hair bouncing with each step. "You're all over the internet." Jack's stomach tightened as he took the phone from her trembling hands. The video was shaky, clearly shot from behind the school fence. There he was, tall and imposing in his work jacket, facing down those three teens. The caption read, "Badass Dad defends daughter from drug dealers number Dad of the Year." "I've already shared it with my bridge club," Mrs. Henderson beamed. "We always knew you were a good father, but this is something else." Jack handed the phone back, forcing a polite smile. "Thanks for showing me, Mrs. Henderson. I should get ready for work." At Miller's hardware store, where Jack had worked since moving to town 8 years ago, the bell above the door chimed constantly with customers who seemed more interested in him than in shopping. Some were regulars he knew well, others he'd never seen before. "There he is," boomed Ted Wilson, a local contractor. He strode up to the counter where Jack was organizing paint samples. "My wife showed me that video this morning. About time someone stood up to those punks." "Just doing what any father would do," Jack mumbled, uncomfortable with the attention. Throughout the morning, more people came by. A young mother touched his arm and thanked him for making the school zone safer. An elderly man insisted on shaking his hand. 2 teenage boys asked if he'd been in the military, their eyes wide with admiration. By lunch break, Jack's manager Mike had to practically shove him into the break room. "Take a breather, man. You're the local hero whether you like it or not." Jack sat alone with his thermos of coffee, his thoughts drifting to darker places. Here they were, celebrating him, while they had no idea what he'd really done in his past life, what he'd failed to do. The afternoon brought more of the same. Backslaps. Congratulations. Questions he deflected with practiced ease. Each interaction made him more tense, like a spring winding tighter and tighter. When he got home that evening, he found Lily curled up on the living room couch, her homework forgotten beside her as she scrolled through her phone. The warm lamplight softened her features, making her look younger than 16. "Dad, you've got to see some of these comments." Her face glowed with excitement. "Listen to this one. We need more fathers like this in our community. True hero right here." She looked up at him, her eyes bright. And this person wrote, "That man's stance. He's definitely got training. Bet he's got some serious background." Jack hung his jacket by the door, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's not a big deal, Lily, but it is." She sat up straighter, tucking her legs under her. "Dad, do you know how many shares this has? People are finally seeing what I've always known, that you're someone special." The pride in her voice hit him like a physical blow. She was looking at him the way she used to, before he'd let his walls go up, before the distance had grown between them. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she said softly. "Really proud." Jack crossed the room and kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Thanks, sweetheart. How about some dinner?" Later that night, long after Lily had gone to bed, Jack sat at the kitchen table. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the old wall clock. The drawer before him was open, and in his hands lay a badge he hadn't looked at in years. The metal was still smooth and cool to the touch. Detective Jack Malone, it read. His thumb traced the numbers he'd once known as well as his own heartbeat. The badge caught the dim kitchen light, throwing shadows across the table's worn surface. He stared at it, this piece of his past he'd tried so hard to bury. All those faces today, smiling at him, thanking him, If they only knew the truth about the lives lost because of his mistakes. The badge seemed to grow heavier in his hands as memories threatened to surface. The Saturday morning sun warmed the town square as Jack and Lily wandered between colorful market stalls. The familiar sense of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, mixing with the cheerful chatter of neighbors greeting each other. Jack found himself relaxing for the first time in days, watching Lily's face light up at each new discovery. "Dad, look at these." Lily pointed to a display of honey jars, each catching the sunlight like amber jewels. "Mrs. Peterson's bees made these. Can we get some for my tea?" Jack smiled, reaching for his wallet. "Sure, sweetheart." He handed over a few bills to the vendor, noticing how Lily carefully selected a jar with a perfect golden honeycomb inside. As they moved through the market, Jack couldn't help but notice the extra attention they were receiving. People waved more enthusiastically than usual, and he caught snippets of whispered conversations. "That's him, the dad from the video." Lily seemed to glow under the attention, standing a little taller beside him. At the bakery stand, Mrs. O'Malley pressed an extra cinnamon roll into their paper bag with a wink. "For our neighborhood hero," she said warmly. Jack felt his neck flush. "That's really not necessary." "Nonsense," Mrs. O'Malley insisted. "We need more people willing to stand up for what's right." They found a wooden bench near the fountain to enjoy their treats. Jack watched as Lily broke her cinnamon roll into small, careful pieces, just like her mother used to do. The memory made his chest tight. "You okay, Dad?" Lily asked, catching his expression. "Just fine, honey." He managed to smile. "Got some crumbs stuck." That's when he noticed him, a man in his 60s, wearing a plain brown jacket, studying them from across the square. There was something familiar about his stance, the way he carried himself. The man's eyes met Jack's, and a jolt of recognition shot through him. "Lily," Jack said quietly, "why don't you check out that flower stand over there? Maybe pick something nice for your window box." Lily glanced between him and the money he held out. "Are you sure? Go on. I'll watch from here." As Lily walked away, the man in the brown jacket approached, his movements deliberate and measured. He sat down on the bench, leaving careful space between them. "Hello, Jack," the man said softly. "Or should I say, Detective Malone." Jack's fingers tightened around his coffee cup. "Frank Delaney. Didn't expect to see you here." "Didn't expect to see you anywhere, to be honest." Frank's weathered face creased with a mix of emotions. "Not after Milwaukee." The word hit Jack like a physical blow. He forced himself to take a slow breath, watching Lily examine purple petunias across the square. "That video of yours is everywhere," Frank continued. "Bold move, coming out of the shadows like that." "Wasn't planned," Jack said tersely. "Just protecting my daughter." Frank nodded slowly. "She's grown beautiful. Looks like Sarah." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But Jack, being online like this, it's dangerous. There are people who still remember, people who might recognize you, just like I did." "I'm not that person anymore," Jack said firmly. "I left that life behind." "Did you?" Frank's voice was gentle but probing. "Or did you just bury it, like that badge I know you still keep?" Jack turned to look at his old colleague, really seeing him for the first time. Frank's hair had gone completely gray, and deep lines marked his face, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "The world's not as simple as your hardware store, Jack," Frank continued. "Those boys you warned off, they're connected. The drug trade in this town runs deeper than you know, and now you've put yourself and Lily right in the spotlight." At the flower stand, Lily was carefully selecting a bunch of lavender, holding it up to catch the sunday. The sight made Jack's throat tight. "What would you have me do? Stand by and do nothing?" "No," Frank sighed. "That was never your style. But you need to be careful. The badge might be in a drawer, but the instincts that earned it, they're still there, and you might need them sooner than you think." Frank stood up, adjusting his jacket. "I'm still connected to some good people. If you need anything." He slipped a business card onto the bench between them. "Frank," Jack called softly as the older man turned to leave. "Thank you." Frank gave a slight nod and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Jack alone with his cooling coffee and heavy thoughts. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. Jack went through the motions, helping Lily plant her new flowers, fixing the loose step on the porch, preparing dinner. But Frank's words echoed in his mind, making every shadow seem deeper, every stranger's glance more significant. That night, After Lily had gone to bed, Jack sat at his kitchen table, the drawer open before him. The badge gleamed dully in the dim light, its surface scratched and tarnished. He ran his thumb over the numbers he knew by heart, remembering the weight of it against his chest, the responsibility it represented. The badge held stories Lily didn't know, couldn't know. Stories of late-night stakeouts and undercover operations, of lives saved and lives lost, of mistakes that still haunted his dreams. Jack lifted the badge, feeling its familiar weight in his palm. For a moment, he was back in Milwaukee, making the choice that would change everything. The choice that sent him running to this quiet town, seeking redemption in simple things like hardware sales and evening meals with his daughter. With careful movements, he placed the badge back in its resting place, closing the drawer with a soft click. But even as he turned the key in the lock, he knew Frank was right. Some things couldn't stay buried forever. The sound of Lily's music drifted down from upstairs, her voice clear and sweet as she practiced for choir. Jack closed his eyes, letting the melody wash over him, grounding him in the present. In this moment, he wasn't Detective Malone with his burden of secrets. He was just Dad, listening to his daughter sing. The morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of First Community Church, casting rainbow patterns across the wooden pews. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat as Pastor Ray's voice filled the sanctuary. Lily sat beside him in a flowery dress, her shoulder touching his arm in silent support. "Sometimes courage comes in unexpected moments," Pastor Ray said, his kind eyes finding Jack in the crowd. "This week, we witnessed one of our own stand up against those who would threaten our children. Brother Jack reminded us that we must protect what matters most." Jack stared down at his weathered hands, folded tightly in his lap. The morning's hymn still echoed in his mind, bringing back memories of singing beside his late wife in this very spot. He could feel dozens of eyes on him, but it was Lily's proud smile that touched him deepest. In Proverbs 28:1, we read that the righteous are as bold as a lion, Pastor Ray continued. Jack showed us that boldness doesn't mean violence. It means having the strength to say enough is enough when we see wrong in our community. After the service, people clustered around Jack in the foyer. Mrs. Henderson, who'd taught Sunday school for 30 years, squeezed his arm with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for protecting our kids," she whispered. Mr. Cooper from the hardware store clapped him on the back, and even shy Tommy Peters gave him a high five. Lily stood nearby, practically glowing as she watched the crowd around her father. For the first time in years, Jack saw something in her eyes he'd thought was lost forever. That look of complete trust, like when she was little and believed her daddy could fix anything. Pastor Ray made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and sharing warm greetings. When he reached Jack, he pulled him into a brief hug. "Your stand might be exactly what this town needed," he said quietly. "Sometimes God uses our smallest actions to create the biggest changes." Across town, in a dimly lit apartment above Miguel's auto shop, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Rico Alvarez sat in his leather chair, replaying the viral video for the 4th time. The 3 teenagers who'd filmed it stood nervously before him, shifting from foot to foot. "Play it again," Rico commanded, his voice soft but sharp. The youngest boy, Tommy Martinez, fumbled with his phone. On the small screen, Jack's confrontation played out once more. Rico leaned forward, studying every detail, the way Jack moved, his stance, the controlled power in his voice. This wasn't some random angry father. Rico had grown up on the streets. He knew how to read people. That look in his eyes, Rico mused, running a finger along his jaw. That's not some hardware store clerk. That's someone who's seen real action. He stood up suddenly, making the boys flinch. "Tell me everything you know about him." He works at Cooper's Hardware," Tommy stammered. "Lives with his daughter on Oak Street. Been here maybe 5-6 years?" Rico paced the room slowly, his expensive shoes silent on the carpet. The walls were covered in framed photos of cars, his legitimate business front, but behind his desk hung a map of the town, marked with colored pins showing his real territory. 6 years, Rico repeated. "And before that, nobody just appears out of nowhere." He stopped in front of the teenagers. "You said his daughter sings in the choir?" "Yeah, Lily," said Marcus, another of the boys. "She's in my English class. Real quiet type, always doing her homework and stuff." Rico nodded slowly, his mind working. "Here's what you're going to do," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "I want you to watch her. When she leaves school, where she goes, who she talks to. But don't let anyone see you doing it." The boys exchanged nervous glances. "But Mr. Alvarez," Tommy started. After what her dad said. Rico's hand shot out, gripping Tommy's shoulder. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Are you more afraid of him than you are of me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Tommy swallowed hard and shook his head. "Good boy," Rico said, releasing him. He walked to his desk and pulled out 3 envelopes, each thick with cash. "Consider this motivation. But remember, be smart about it. No getting close, no making contact. Just watch and report back to me." The teenagers took the envelopes with shaking hands. Rico dismissed them with a wave, turning back to the town map on his wall. Something about that man's warning had stirred memories of old police raids, of undercover operations that had cost him territory years ago. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Hey, it's Rico. I need you to dig up everything you can on a Jack Malone. Lives on Oak Street." He paused, listening. "Yeah, the guy from that viral video. Something tells me there's more to his story than what we're seeing." Rico hung up and walked to his window, looking down at the street below where the 3 boys were hurrying away. In the distance, church bells were ringing, marking the end of morning service. He watched as families began filling the sidewalks, heading home to their Sunday dinners, blissfully unaware of the currents moving beneath their peaceful town's surface. The autumn afternoon cast long shadows across the sidewalk as Lily and her 3 choir friends walked home from school. Their backpacks bounced in rhythm with their steps as they chatted about the upcoming fall concert. Sarah, the tallest of the group, was going on about her solo piece while Lily nodded, but her attention kept drifting to the figures that had been following them for the past 2 blocks. "Did you guys notice?" Lily whispered, trying not to be obvious as she glanced over her shoulder. The same hooded boys from last week lingered about 30 yards behind them, hands stuffed in their pockets, heads down but clearly tracking their movement. Madison, walking closest to Lily, squeezed her arm. "Maybe we should call someone." Her voice trembled slightly. "It's okay," Lily said, though her heart hammered in her chest. She recognized one of them as the guy who'd whistled at her last week, the one her dad had confronted. Their presence made her skin crawl. The girls picked up their pace, their casual conversation dying away. The sound of their footsteps seemed too loud in the quiet residential street. Lily clutched her phone in her pocket, debating whether to call her dad, when a familiar rumble of an engine approached from behind. The old blue pickup truck pulled alongside them, and Jack Malone's concerned face appeared in the driver's window. He hit the horn twice, 2 sharp, authoritative beeps that cut through the afternoon quiet like gunshots. The effect was immediate. When Lily looked back, the hooded figures had vanished into the maze of side streets and alleyways, like shadows fleeing from sudden light. "Need a ride, girls?" Jack called out, his voice casual but his eyes scanning the street with the intensity Lily had started noticing more and more lately. The relief on her friends' faces was obvious as they piled into the truck's extended cab, squeezing together in the back seat while Lily took the front. Jack waited until they were all buckled in before pulling away from the curb. "Thanks, Mr. Malone," Madison said, her voice still shaky. "Those guys were creeping us out." Jack's jaw tightened, but he kept his tone light. "Just happened to be in the neighborhood. Thought I'd save you ladies the walk." After dropping off her friends, the truck's cabin fell into an uncomfortable silence. Lily watched her father's face in profile, the way his eyes constantly checked the mirrors, how his knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Later that evening, over a dinner of store-bought lasagna, Lily pushed her food around her plate. The questions that had been building up finally spilled out. "Dad, why were you really there today? You're supposed to be at the hardware store until 6. Jack took a long drink of water before answering. "Just had a feeling." "A feeling?" Lily set down her fork. "Like the feeling those guys had when they saw you and ran away?" She leaned forward. "Dad, they were terrified of you. Why?" "Lily." His voice carried a warning note, but she pressed on. "No, I want to know. First that video goes viral, then people at church treat you like some kind of hero, and now these guys." She gestured with her hands, frustrated. "There's something you're not telling me." Jack stood up and carried his plate to the sink, his movements deliberate and controlled. "What I'm telling you is that I'll keep you safe. That's all you need to know right now." But Dad, he turned, and something in his expression made her stop. It wasn't anger she saw there, but a deep, haunting kind of pain. Please, Lily, trust me on this. Like Mom trusted you? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Jack flinched as if she'd struck him. For a moment, neither of them moved or spoke. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. I'm sorry, Lily whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't mean… It's okay. His voice was rough. Go finish your homework. I'll clean up here. Lily retreated to her room, leaving her half-eaten dinner behind. Through her closed door, she could hear her father moving around the house, his footsteps heavier than usual, pausing at windows and doors. Hours later, after she'd changed into her pajamas and was sitting cross-legged on her bed with her history textbook, she heard him making his final rounds. The familiar sound of locks being tested, twice at each entry point. Front door, back door, garage door, all the ground floor windows. Then came the creak of floorboards outside her room as he paused there, probably checking on her as he did every night. Lily held her breath, wondering if he'd come in, if maybe now he'd finally open up about whatever secret he was carrying. But after a moment, his footsteps moved away. In the quiet house, she heard him stop at the living room window, the big bay window that overlooked their front yard and the street beyond. His voice drifted up, so soft she almost missed it. Lord, give me strength. Help me protect her. Please, help me be worthy of that trust again. The words hung in the darkness, heavy with meaning Lily couldn't fully grasp, but they made her throat tight with emotion. She closed her textbook, no longer able to focus on dates and historical events, her mind full of questions about her father's past and the shadows that seemed to be closing in around them. The doorbell chimed through the Malone house on Tuesday afternoon, interrupting Jack's attempt at making spaghetti sauce from scratch. He wiped his hands on a dish towel and headed for the front door, his steps measured and cautious. Through the peephole, he saw a young woman in a blazer holding a microphone, with a cameraman adjusting his equipment behind her. Jack's jaw tightened. He opened the door just enough to block the entrance with his body. Can I help you? The reporter's face lit up with practiced enthusiasm. Mr. Malone, I'm Andrea Chen from Channel 7 News. We're doing a feature story on everyday heroes in our community, and your video has really touched people's hearts. Would you be willing to share your story? No comment. Jack started to close the door, but Andrea pressed on. Please, sir. Parents everywhere are inspired by your courage. Standing up to those drug dealers, protecting not just your daughter, but all the kids at that school, people want to know more about the man behind that powerful moment. Jack's hand gripped the doorframe. I appreciate your interest, but my daughter and I value our privacy. Have a good day. Dad? Who is it? Lily's voice came from behind him. Before he could stop her, she squeezed past his arm to see who was at the door. Andrea's smile widened. You must be Lily, the daughter everyone's talking about. How does it feel to have such a brave father? Jack tried to intervene, but Lily was already beaming at the camera. It was pretty amazing. I was embarrassed at first, but then I saw how everyone at church was so proud of him. Even Pastor Dave talked about it in his sermon. Lily, Jack warned quietly, the whole neighborhood feels safer now. Lily continued, caught up in the moment. Dad's always been protective, ever since Mom died. But this is different. It's like he's finally letting people see the real him again. The reporter leaned forward eagerly. The real him? That's enough, Jack cut in firmly, placing a hand on Lily's shoulder. No interviews. Good day. He closed the door despite Andrea's protests, then turned to his daughter with a heavy sigh. Honey, we need to be careful about what we share with strangers. But Dad, they just want to tell your story. Why is that so bad? Jack rubbed his temples. Some stories are better left untold. Across town, in a dimly lit office above a car wash, Rico Alvarez replayed the Channel 7 News live stream on his phone. The reporter hadn't gotten much, but Lily's innocent comments had given him exactly what he needed. He paused on Jack's face. Those weren't the eyes of some random protective father. There was training there. Experience. Rico picked up his burner phone and dialed a number from memory. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. Yeah? Miguel, need you to run a name for me. Jack Malone. Looking for any law enforcement connection, especially undercover work, probably from about 15, 20 years back. Gonna cost you, Rico smiled thinly. The usual rate, plus a bonus if you find something good. 2 hours later, his phone buzzed. The text contained a single photo, a newspaper clipping from 17 years ago. The headline read, "Undercover Operation Ends in Tragedy." In the background of the crime scene photo, barely visible, was a younger Jack Malone being led away by fellow officers. Rico's fingers drummed on his desk as he made another call. "Tomas? Got a job for you and the boys. That girl from the school? I want eyes on her. 24/7. Learn her schedule, her friends, everything. What about the father? He's not just some dad-playing hero. He's ex-police, undercover, probably knows more about our operation than we thought." Rico's voice hardened. "This isn't about sending a message anymore. He's a real threat. Want us to take care of him?" "No. We do this smart." Rico stared at the paused video of Lily on his screen. "The daughter. She's the key. You know what to do." Later that night, Jack stood in Lily's doorway, watching as she settled into bed. Her room was a teenager's sanctuary, choir medals hanging beside Taylor Swift posters, stuffed animals sharing space with makeup brushes. She looked so much like her mother, sometimes it made his heart ache. "Dad?" Lily pulled her comforter up to her chin. "Are you mad about the reporter?" Jack crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed. "No, sweetheart. I just worry." "You always worry." She reached for his hand. "But you don't have to do everything alone anymore. People want to help. They look up to you. That's what concerns me." He squeezed her hand gently. "Sometimes attention brings trouble. Is this about your old job? The one you never talk about?" Jack's breath caught, but he kept his voice steady. "Some parts of the past need to stay there, Lily, to keep the present safe." He leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Get some sleep. Big choir practice tomorrow, right?" "Right." She yawned. "Love you, Dad. Love you too, baby girl." Jack left her room, closing the door softly behind him. He moved through the house methodically, checking locks and windows, a habit he'd never broken. When he reached the living room, he noticed movement through the front window. A dark sedan was parked across the street, its engine running. He stood absolutely still, hidden by the curtain, and watched. The car remained there for several long minutes before finally pulling away, its taillights disappearing around the corner. Jack's hand instinctively went to his side, where his badge used to rest, finding only empty air. The morning sun cast long shadows across the hardware store's parking lot as Jack pulled up in his pickup. He was early as usual, wanting to get the new shipment organized before opening. As he climbed out of the truck, movement near the store's side entrance caught his eye. Two teenage boys were huddled against the wall, hands stuffed in their pockets against the morning chill. Jack's first instinct was to chase them off, but something made him pause. The taller boy wore a threadbare jacket at least 2 sizes too small. The shorter one had shoes with holes in them. They weren't the usual troublemakers. These kids looked hungry. "Hey there!" Jack called out, keeping his voice gentle. Both boys startled, ready to run. "Hold on a minute. I've got a truck full of boxes that need unloading. Could use some help if you're interested. $10 an hour each." The taller boy squared his shoulders. "We ain't looking for charity." "Good thing it's not charity then. It's honest work." Jack unlocked the store's back door. "Your choice. But there's hot coffee inside, too." The boys exchanged glances. After a moment's hesitation, they followed him in. Inside, Jack flicked on the lights and started the coffee maker. "I'm Jack. You boys got names?" "Marcus," said the taller one. His companion mumbled something that sounded like Dex before slouching against a wall. Jack poured 3 cups of coffee, adding extra sugar to the boys' cups. "Milk's in the mini-fridge if you want it." He watched as Marcus wrapped his hands around the warm cup, savoring it like it was something precious. For the next hour, they worked together unloading boxes of power tools and garden supplies. Jack noticed Marcus was quick to learn the inventory system, asking smart questions about where things went. The boy had a sharp mind hiding behind those guarded eyes. "You're good at this," Jack said, as Marcus efficiently organized a shelf of screwdrivers. "Ever think about part-time work?" Marcus shrugged, but Jack caught the flash of interest in his eyes. "Maybe. If it was legit." "This is as legit as it gets. Hardware store's been here 30 years. Jack handed him another box. "Your friend Dex too if he wants, though he seems less excited about honest labor." Marcus glanced at Dex, who was half-heartedly sweeping the floor. "He's got other opportunities," Marcus said carefully. Jack recognized the code in those words. Other opportunities meant street corners and quick money. He'd heard it countless times during his undercover days. Those opportunities come with a price, Jack said quietly. Trust me. I've seen where that road leads. Marcus's hands stilled on the box. You don't know nothing about my life. Maybe not, Jack admitted. But I know what it's like to be 15 and angry at the world, to feel like nobody's got your back. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I know what it's like to not have a father around. Marcus's head snapped up, surprise breaking through his tough facade. The store's bell chimed as Lily walked in, her school backpack slung over one shoulder. She stopped short at the sight of the two boys, her eyes widening with recognition. Dad? She called out uncertainly. Back here, sweetheart. Just getting some help with inventory. Jack gestured to Marcus. This is Marcus. He's giving me a hand today. Lily approached cautiously, but her expression softened when she saw Marcus organizing the shelves. You've got him doing the screwdrivers? Dad, you won't even let me touch those displays. That's because you inherited my complete lack of organizational skills, Jack teased. Marcus here's got a natural talent for it. A slight smile tugged at Marcus's lips. The first real one Jack had seen all morning. There's some sodas in the break room fridge, Jack told Marcus. Why don't you and Dex take 5? You've earned it. Once the boys were out of earshot, Lily turned to her father. Aren't those the same kids from last week? The ones you warned off? Jack shook his head. Different group, these boys. He paused, searching for the right words. They just need a chance, Lily. Sometimes that's all any of us need. Lily studied her father's face, seeing something there she hadn't noticed before. Not just the stern protector, but also a man who truly cared about helping others. When Marcus and Dex returned, Lily surprised everyone by offering to show them how the cash register worked. Soon, she was laughing at Marcus's attempts to memorize the product codes, while even Dex seemed to relax a little. The afternoon passed quickly. As closing time approached, Jack counted out the promised wages, adding a little extra. Same time tomorrow, if you're interested, he told them. Regular part-time work if you want it. Dex mumbled something about being busy, but Marcus nodded. Yeah, maybe. Thanks, Mr. Malone. Call me Jack, and let me give you a ride home. It's getting dark. In the truck, Marcus directed Jack through neighborhoods that grew progressively more rundown. They rode in comfortable silence until Marcus spoke up. How'd you know? About my dad? Recognize something in your eyes, Jack said simply. Same look I used to see in the mirror. Marcus nodded, staring out the window. He left when I was 6. Mom says he's in California now, but I don't know if that's true. His loss, Jack said firmly. You're a good kid, Marcus. Smart too. Don't let anyone tell you different. They pulled up to a small apartment complex with peeling paint and broken shutters. Marcus hesitated before getting out. See you tomorrow? I'll be there, Jack promised. As he watched Marcus disappear into the building, Jack felt something stir in his heart. A familiar mix of hope and purpose he hadn't experienced since his detective days. But this was different. This wasn't about bringing down criminals. It was about preventing kids from becoming them in the first place. He thought about Marcus organizing those shelves, asking questions, showing hints of the person he could become with just a little guidance. One boy saved might save others. He'd seen that pattern play out before, both for good and bad. Like ripples in a pond, every action had consequences beyond what you could see. The church basement smelled of old hymnals and fresh coffee. Metal folding chairs formed a loose circle under fluorescent lights that hummed quietly overhead. Jack sat next to Pastor Ray, his weathered hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup. The steam rose in lazy curls as he listened to the pastor outline his vision. We need to reach these kids before the streets do, Pastor Ray said, spreading papers across the scratched folding table. His enthusiasm was contagious, his kind eyes bright with purpose. Your work with Marcus showed me something, Jack. These young people aren't looking for a program. They're looking for someone who cares. Jack nodded, thinking of the quiet gratitude in Marcus's eyes when he'd dropped him home. They need to know there's another way. Exactly. Pastor Ray pulled out a colorful flyer. I'm thinking we start with a community dinner. Music, food, games for the kids. Show them the church isn't just a building. It's family. The basement door creaked open, and Lily poked her head in. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she carried her worn music folder under one arm. Jack watched as she hesitated at the top of the stairs, then made her way down. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, shifting from foot to foot. "But I overheard you talking about music for the event?" Pastor Ray's face lit up. "We were just getting to that part, actually. Got any suggestions?" Lily took a deep breath, and Jack recognized the determined set of her jaw, the same expression her mother used to get before making a big decision. "I'd like to sing. Maybe get some of the choir kids involved too?" Jack's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. In all the years since her mother's death, Lily had never volunteered to sing outside of regular church services. It had become a private thing, something she held close. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" Jack asked carefully. Lily met his eyes, and there was something new there. Pride, maybe, or hope. "I'm sure, Dad. If you can step up to help the neighborhood, so can I." Pastor Ray clapped his hands together. "That's wonderful. Music brings people together like nothing else." They spent the next hour planning. Word spread quickly through the church's network of Sunday school teachers and youth group leaders. Mrs. Chen from the Korean grocery store offered to donate food. The Martinez family volunteered their teenagers to help set up. Even gruff old Mr. Peterson, who usually complained about youth nowadays, promised to bring his famous barbecue. Jack watched in amazement as the simple idea blossomed into something bigger. People stopped by the basement to offer help, a local restaurant owner pledging plates and utensils, a retired teacher suggesting craft activities for younger kids. With each new person who joined their circle, the energy in the room grew. Lily stayed through it all, her initial shyness melting away as she worked with Pastor Ray to create a lineup of songs. She pulled out her phone to text choir friends, and soon replies were pouring in. "Sarah can bring her guitar," she announced. "And Miguel plays drums at his uncle's church. He said he'd love to help." The planning session stretched into early afternoon. As people began to drift away, Jack felt something settle in his chest, a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just about protecting the neighborhood anymore. It was about building something new. Lily caught up with him in the parking lot as he was heading to his truck. "Dad, wait!" He turned, and suddenly she was hugging him tight, her face pressed against his jacket. Jack wrapped his arms around her, remembering when she was small enough to lift onto his shoulders. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Really proud. Mom would be too." Jack had to swallow hard before he could speak. "Thank you, baby girl. That means everything." They stood there for a moment, father and daughter in the warm afternoon sun, while church bells chimed softly in the distance. For the first time in years, Jack felt like maybe, just maybe, he was finding his way back to the man he used to be, the man his daughter could look up to, the man his wife had loved. Across town, in a dimly lit bar that reeked of stale beer and cigarettes, Rico lounged in a corner booth. One of his runners had just finished telling him about the church's plans for community outreach. The boy shifted nervously, waiting for his boss's reaction. Rico's laugh was sharp and cold. He took a long drag from his cigarette, letting the smoke curl around him like a snake. "Our friend Jack thinks he can play hero? Save the neighborhood with some church songs and free food?" He crushed the cigarette into an overflowing ashtray. "We'll see how long the hero lasts when his little girl disappears." The runner nodded quickly and scurried away, leaving Rico alone with his dark thoughts and darker plans. The church parking lot buzzed with activity as people streamed in through the double doors. Warm light spilled onto the steps, and the sound of laughter and chatter filled the evening air. Inside, streamers hung from the ceiling, and round tables dotted the fellowship hall, each covered with checkered tablecloths and simple flower arrangements. Jack Malone moved between the tables, adjusting chairs and making sure everything was just right. His weathered hands smoothed tablecloths and straightened name cards with careful precision. Every few minutes, his eyes would drift to the small stage where Lily sat on a wooden stool, her fingers moving over her guitar strings. "The microphone's still giving feedback," Lily called out, her brow furrowed in concentration. She wore a pretty blue dress that reminded Jack so much of her mother that his chest tightened. "I'll check it," he said, setting down the stack of programs he'd been carrying. As he climbed the 3 steps to the stage, Pastor Ray appeared with a toolbox. "Let me help with that," the pastor offered, kneeling to examine the sound equipment. "We want everything perfect for our star performers." Lily's cheeks flushed pink. Dad, are you sure about this? We've only practiced it a few times. Jack placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You've got your mother's voice, sweetheart. And this song, well, it was her favorite. The fellowship hall filled quickly with families, elderly couples, and teenagers. Marcus, the young boy from the hardware store, sat in the front row with his mother, waving enthusiastically at Jack. Other familiar faces from the neighborhood filled the seats. The baker who gave day-old bread to struggling families, the retired teacher who tutored kids for free, and even Frank, the ex-officer who'd recognized Jack, stood quietly in the back. Pastor Ray stepped up to the microphone. Tonight is about community, he began, his voice warm and steady. About reaching out to one another with open hearts. And to start us off, we have a special treat. Jack and Lily Malone sharing a song that means a lot to their family. Jack settled onto the stool next to his daughter, his own guitar balanced on his knee. He hadn't performed in public since before his Undercover days, and his fingers trembled slightly as they found their position on the strings. Lily looked at him, and in that moment, he saw such trust in her eyes that his nervousness melted away. She began to play, her fingers moving gracefully across the strings. Jack joined in, their guitars weaving together in perfect harmony. When Lily's voice rose in the first verse, several people in the audience gasped softly. She sang of hope and redemption, of light breaking through darkness, and Jack's deeper voice joined hers in the chorus. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. The familiar words took on new meaning as father and daughter sang together. Jack's voice, rough but true, supported Lily's clear soprano. He watched her face as she sang, saw the joy there, and felt something long broken inside him begin to heal. In the audience, Marcus wiped his eyes with his sleeve. An elderly woman dabbed at her face with a tissue. Even Frank, standing in the shadows at the back, nodded slowly, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. As the last notes faded, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the room erupted in applause. People stood, clapping and wiping away tears. Pastor Ray beamed from his seat, and Jack saw several people hugging each other. Lily turned to him, her eyes shining. "Dad, we did it," she whispered. Jack pulled her into a tight hug, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. "We sure did, sweetheart." His voice was husky with emotion. "Your mom would be so proud of you right now. So proud." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and shared meals. People moved from table to table, talking and laughing. Jack watched as Lily sat with a group of teenagers, her face animated as she showed one of them a chord progression on her guitar. The sight of her, so happy and free, made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he was finally doing something right. As the event wound down, Jack and Lily helped stack chairs and clean up. Pastor Ray caught Jack's arm as they were leaving. "You've started something here, Jack. People are connecting. They're hoping again." Jack nodded, unable to find words for the mix of emotions he felt. He wrapped an arm around Lily's shoulders as they walked to the truck, the night air cool and fresh against their faces. Stars twinkled overhead, and for the first time in years, Jack felt completely at peace. They climbed into the old pickup, both still buzzing with the energy of the evening. "Can we stop for ice cream?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with excitement. "Not tonight, sweetheart. It's getting late," Jack replied, starting the engine. As they pulled out of the church parking lot, he glanced in his rearview mirror. A black SUV pulled out several cars behind them, its headlights gleaming in the darkness. Jack focused on the road ahead, listening to Lily hum softly beside him, the memory of their duet still hanging in the air between them. The evening had been perfect. Almost too perfect. Jack couldn't stop smiling as he pulled into their driveway, the memory of their duet still warming his heart. Lily had been radiant on stage, her voice carrying their shared pain and hope into something beautiful. "I can grab those groceries now, Dad," Lily said, already reaching for the door handle. "You look beat." Jack hesitated. The street was quiet, too quiet for his liking. Old instincts stirred, but he pushed them down. "You sure? It's pretty late." "Dad, I'm 16. Lily rolled her eyes, but her smile was gentle. "I can handle putting away milk and bread. Besides, I want to practice that new song before bed." The porch light cast a warm glow on her face, so much like her mother's. Jack's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't know, sweetheart." "You're doing it again," Lily said, her voice softer now. The overprotective thing. We just had the most amazing night. Don't spoil it by worrying. Jack ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. She was right, he needed to trust her more. Okay, but lock up right away. I'll be back in 20 minutes tops. Promise. Lily leaned over and kissed his cheek. Get some of those chocolate cookies I like? Already on the list. Jack watched as she bounded up the steps, guitar case swinging. She unlocked the door, turned, and gave him a little wave before disappearing inside. The local grocery store was nearly empty this late. Jack moved quickly through the aisles, grabbing essentials and Lily's cookies. The cashier tried making small talk about the fundraiser, but Jack's responses were distracted. Something felt off, a shadow at the edge of his awareness that he couldn't shake. The drive home took exactly 7 minutes. Jack counted every second, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When he turned onto their street, his heart stopped. The porch light was off. Lily always left it on for him. Jack pulled into the driveway so fast, the tires squealed. The front door stood wide open, swaying slightly in the night breeze. The grocery bag slipped from his arms, cans rolling across the concrete. Eggs cracked and spread like pale wounds. Lily? His voice cracked as he rushed inside. Lily! The living room was devastated. The coffee table lay overturned. Family photos shattered across the floor. The couch cushions had been slashed, stuffing spilling out like snow. But it was the wall that made his blood run cold. Spray painted in violent red letters. Back off now. No, no, no. Jack stumbled through the house, calling her name. Her bedroom door hung off its hinges. The sheets were tangled, her phone lying broken on the floor. Sheet music scattered like fallen leaves. In the kitchen, chairs were thrown about. Signs of a struggle Lily hadn't gone quietly. That thought brought both pride and terror. Back in the living room, something soft caught his eye. Lily's favorite scarf, the one her mother had knitted, lay crumpled near the wall. Jack fell to his knees, trembling fingers reaching for it. The wool still held her warmth, still smelled like her shampoo. The weight of failure crushed him. He'd let his guard down. He'd left her alone. After everything he'd done to protect her, after all the years of hiding and careful planning, one moment of weakness had cost him everything. I'm sorry, he whispered, pressing the scarf to his face. I'm so sorry. Tears came then, hot and desperate. Jack Malone, former detective, protector, father, sobbed like a child, rocking back and forth on his knees. The scarf grew damp in his hands as memories flooded him. Lily's first steps, her first day of school, the way she'd looked tonight on stage, so strong and beautiful. The painted threat loomed above him, still wet and dripping. Each red streak felt like an accusation. He'd failed to keep her safe. He'd failed as a father. He'd failed. Jack's shoulders shook with grief as he knelt there in the ruins of his home, clutching all he had left of his daughter, a simple scarf that held the ghosts of happier days. The night pressed in around him, cold and unforgiving, while somewhere in the darkness, Lily needed him more than ever. Morning light crept through the curtains, but Jack Malone hadn't moved from his spot on Lily's bed since the police left hours ago. In one hand, he gripped his old detective's badge until the metal edges bit into his palm. In the other, he clutched Lily's pale blue scarf, still carrying the faint scent of her strawberry shampoo. The bedroom around him was a shrine to his daughter's life choir, competition ribbons pinned to a corkboard, photographs of her with friends taped to the mirror, and the guitar she'd played just last night propped in the corner. The sight of it twisted his gut. Just hours ago, they'd been on stage together, her voice soaring while he strummed along. His mind drifted back to that other night, 12 years ago, when everything went wrong. The warehouse had been dark, just like this room, and he'd been so sure of himself. Detective Jack Malone, star of the Undercover division, about to make the biggest bust of his career. I trusted my instincts, he whispered to the empty room, his voice cracking. And people died because of it. The memories came in sharp, cruel flashes. The informant who'd betrayed him, the look of recognition in the gang leader's eyes when Jack's cover was blown. The gunfire, the screams. 3 young officers, fresh from the academy, who'd trusted him to lead them right. Their families at the funeral, unable to look him in the eye. Jack pressed Lily's scarf to his face, breathing in deeply. I'm so sorry, baby girl. I thought I could keep you safe by running away from who I was. I was wrong. A gentle knock at the front door, barely registered. It came again, more insistent this time. Jack didn't move, lost in the spiral of guilt and fear. "Jack?" Pastor Ray's voice carried through the house. "I'm coming in, brother." Footsteps on the stairs. Then Pastor Ray's solid frame filled the doorway. The pastor's usual cheerful face was drawn with concern, his collar slightly askew like he'd dressed in a hurry. "The whole congregation is praying, Jack. We've got people ready to help search, make phone calls, whatever you need." Jack's laugh was hollow. "Prayers? Where were prayers when those officers died because of me? Where were they when Maria got sick?" His voice broke on his wife's name. "Where were they last night when those animals took my little girl?" Pastor Ray crossed the room and sat beside Jack on the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. He didn't reach for Jack or try to take the badge from his white-knuckled grip. He just sat there, a steady presence in the storm of Jack's grief. "You remember what you told Marcus the other day at the store?" Pastor Ray asked quietly. "About second chances?" Jack's jaw clenched. "That was different." "Was it?" "You saw something in that boy that reminded you of yourself. You chose to help instead of turning away. That wasn't just kindness, Jack. That was God working through you." "I'm not that man anymore, Ray. I can't be." "The man I saw on stage last night with his daughter? The one who's been inspiring this community to stand up against the darkness? That's exactly who you are." Pastor Ray's voice grew firmer. "The enemy wants you to believe you're nothing but your mistakes. But God sees more. He sees a warrior who's been preparing for this moment his whole life." Jack stared down at the badge in his hand. The metal caught the morning light, throwing back a dull gleam. 12 years of dust and regret couldn't hide the purpose it represented. "I failed those officers," Jack whispered. "I failed Maria. I can't fail Lily too." "Then don't." Pastor Ray stood, his shadow falling across Jack. "You're not alone this time. You've got a whole community behind you. And more importantly, you've got faith even if you don't believe it right now." Something stirred in Jack's chest, cutting through the fog of despair. He thought of Lily's face when he'd confronted those boys outside the school, the pride in her eyes when the community rallied around him, the way she'd sung last night, her voice strong and clear, just like her mother's. His fingers traced the edge of his badge, familiar grooves and scratches telling their own story of service and sacrifice. The weight of it felt different now, not just a reminder of failure, but a tool God had given him for such a time as this. Slowly, Jack rose from the bed. His legs were stiff from sitting all night, but his mind was clearing. He carefully folded Lily's scarf and tucked it into his pocket, close to his heart. The badge he clipped to his belt where it had rode for 15 years of service. Looking up at Pastor Ray, his voice came out steady and cold as steel. "I'm coming for you, baby girl." Jack's hands trembled as he dragged the old army duffel from beneath his bed, dust coating its olive green canvas. He hadn't opened it since moving to town 5 years ago, hoping he'd never need to again. The zipper groaned as he pulled it open, revealing the pieces of his past life. Inside lay the tools of his former trade-detailed street maps of the city, now creased and yellowed at the edges, his old notepad filled with contact numbers and safe house locations. At the bottom, wrapped in an oilcloth, rested his service weapon. The metal felt cold and foreign in his hands after so many years. Spreading everything across his bedroom floor, Jack sorted through the items methodically. His detective's instincts, dormant for so long, stirred back to life. He picked up his phone and dialed Frank's number, knowing his old colleague would be awake despite the early hour. "I need everything you have on Rico Alvarez," Jack said without preamble when Frank answered. A heavy sigh crackled through the line. "Figured you'd call. Jack, you know this could go south real fast. You're not a cop anymore." "He has my daughter, Frank." Jack's voice cracked. "I can't just sit here. Give me an hour," Frank replied after a long pause. "Meet at the diner on 4th. The morning rush had ended by the time Jack slid into a corner booth across from Frank. The retired officer looked tired, deep lines etched around his mouth as he pushed a manila envelope across the table. "Rico's operation has grown," Frank explained in low tones. "He's got 3 main distribution points, but word is he's been spending time at this warehouse on the east side." He tapped a circled address on one of the papers. "Jack, promise me you won't do anything stupid. Let the department handle this." Jack tucked the envelope inside his jacket. "I appreciate the help, Frank. That's all I'm asking for right now." Frank grabbed his arm as he started to slide out of the booth. "I mean it, Malone. You go in there half-cocked, and both you and Lily could end up dead." The rest of the day passed in agonizing slowness as Jack studied the intelligence Frank had given him. He marked locations on his maps, cross-referencing them with his old notes about dealer patterns and territory lines. When darkness fell, he loaded his duffel into his pickup and began his surveillance. The first location was a bust, just low-level dealers hanging around a convenience store. The second yielded more promise. Jack watched from his truck as Rico's distinctive black SUV pulled up to an abandoned auto shop. The gang leader went inside for 20 minutes before emerging with a thick envelope. Jack followed at a distance when Rico left, keeping his headlights off on the darker streets. The SUV wound through the industrial district before turning down a narrow access road that led to a cluster of warehouses. Jack killed his engine and coasted to a stop, parking in the shadows of an old loading dock. Through his binoculars, he counted 4 guards patrolling the perimeter of the largest warehouse. Rico's SUV was parked by a side entrance, along with 3 other vehicles Jack recognized from his earlier surveillance. His heart pounded as he noted security cameras mounted at the corners of the building. For 3 hours, he documented guard rotations and blind spots, his hand cramping as he sketched the layout in his notepad. The guards changed shifts at midnight, and in that brief window of movement, Jack spotted something through a grimy second-floor window that made his blood run cold. Lily sat in a metal folding chair, her hands bound behind her back. Even from this distance, Jack could see she still wore the dress from the fundraiser. A single bulb illuminated her from above, and though she looked scared, her posture remained defiant. Jack's jaw clenched so tight his teeth creaked. His hands curled into fists around the binoculars as he watched a guard pass by the window, blocking his view of Lily momentarily. 5 years of peaceful living dissolved in an instant, replaced by the cold focus of his detective training. They had his baby girl. Nothing else mattered now. He documented every detail he could see, the number of windows, the rust patterns on the metal siding that could provide handholds, the timing of the security lights that swept the parking lot. His notes filled page after page as the night deepened. At one point, Rico emerged to smoke a cigarette, speaking sharply into his phone. Jack's fingers tightened around his pen until it nearly snapped, but he forced himself to remain still and hidden. When Rico went back inside, Jack lowered his binoculars and pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, taking deep breaths to stay focused. The warehouse was like a fortress, with too many variables for a frontal assault. He would need a different approach, something they wouldn't expect from a simple hardware store owner and single dad. But first, he needed more intelligence, more patterns to analyze, more weaknesses to exploit. Jack settled deeper into his seat, ignoring the cramp in his legs and the gnawing in his stomach. He would watch all night if necessary, memorizing every detail that might help him reach his daughter. Through his windshield, the warehouse loomed against the star-filled sky, its shadows concealing both his greatest fear and his only hope. Somewhere inside those walls, Lily waited. Jack touched the badge in his pocket, a silent promise to make things right. This time, failure wasn't an option. The kitchen table disappeared under a mess of wrinkled maps and blueprints. Frank leaned over them, his weathered fingers tracing lines across the warehouse district, while Jack marked potential entry points with red circles. "The main entrance is watched round the clock," Frank said, tapping a spot on the map. "But there's a service store here, behind the loading dock. Guards check it every 30 minutes. Jack nodded, his face tight with concentration. Dark circles under his eyes betrayed his sleepless night, but his gaze remained sharp and focused. "I spotted 2 guards on rotation. They're sloppy. Probably new recruits Rico hired to beef up security." "Let me call in some favors," Frank pleaded, straightening up with a grunt. "I know guys who'd help, good men who kept their badges clean." "No." Jack's voice was firm but gentle. "I won't risk anyone else getting hurt. This is my fight, Frank. My daughter, your funeral," Frank muttered, but his eyes showed concern rather than judgment. "At least let me be your eyes outside. I can watch the perimeter, call if anything changes." Jack reached across the table and gripped his old friend's shoulder. "I need you to stay clear. If something goes wrong," he swallowed hard. "Someone needs to know the truth, for Lily's sake." The kitchen door creaked open, and Pastor Ray stepped in, his kind face solemn. "I thought I might find you both here." He carried his worn Bible in one hand and a thermos in the other. "Coffee? It's not my wife's best, but it's hot." "Thanks, Pastor." Jack accepted a steaming cup, warming his hands around it. The familiar scent of coffee mixed with the mustiness of old papers and the lingering worry that filled the room. Frank gathered his coat. "I'll do one last drive-by, check for any changes in their routine." He paused at the door. "Jack, be careful. Rico's not just some street thug. He's got connections." After Frank left, Pastor Ray settled into a chair beside Jack. "May I?" He opened his Bible to a marked page. "Before you go, I'd like to pray with you." Jack nodded, his throat tight. They bowed their heads as Pastor Ray's gentle voice filled the kitchen. "Lord, watch over your servant Jack as he faces this trial. Guide his steps, steady his hands, and protect both him and Lily. Let your light shine in the darkest places." Across town, in a cold warehouse office, Lily sat with her back against a filing cabinet. Her wrists were bound with zip ties, but they'd left her ankles free. A small window high up let in strips of fading daylight. She could hear the guards laughing outside the door, sharing crude jokes and the smell of cigarette smoke. Lily closed her eyes, remembering the last time she'd prayed with her mom. It was just before the cancer took her, when hope seemed as distant as the stars. Her mom had smiled, weak but radiant, and whispered, "Baby, when you're scared, just remember, God's light shines brightest in the dark." Now, Lily whispered those same words to herself, drawing strength from the memory. "Please keep Dad safe," she added softly, "and help him find me." Back at the house, Jack stood in his bedroom, methodically checking his gear. The service weapon felt both foreign and familiar in his hands as he loaded it with practiced moves. A flashlight, wire cutters, dark clothes, and a first aid kit went into a small backpack. He paused at Lily's room, touching the door frame where pencil marks tracked her growth over the years. Each line held a memory: her first day of school, the Christmas she got her guitar, the morning after they buried her mom when she'd insisted on measuring herself because life has to go on, Dad. In the bathroom, Jack stared at himself in the mirror. The face looking back was older, lined with years of guilt and grief, but in his eyes burned the same determination he'd carried as a young detective. He splashed cold water on his face and took steady breaths. The sun was setting when Jack loaded his gear into the truck. Purple and orange streaked the sky, and a cool breeze carried the scent of approaching rain. He caught his reflection in the driver's side window. Not just a hardware store clerk anymore, not just a grieving widower or a failed detective. Tonight, he was a father going to save his daughter. Pastor Ray stood on the porch, Bible still in hand. "Remember, Jack, you're not alone in this fight." Jack nodded once, firmly, then climbed into his truck. The engine rumbled to life, a sound that seemed to echo his own awakening. The man he used to be, and the man he'd become, were finally facing the same direction, driven by the same purpose: bringing Lily home. He adjusted the rearview mirror, meeting his own gaze one last time. The years had changed him. But underneath it all, he recognized the steel in his expression, the look of a man who knew exactly what he had to do and was ready to do it. The moon cast long shadows across the warehouse yard as Jack moved silently between stacked shipping containers. His heart thundered in his chest, but his hands remained steady, muscle memory from years of undercover work taking over. The security light above the side entrance flickered, creating perfect moments of darkness. A young guard leaned against the wall, scrolling through his phone, clearly bored with the night shift. Jack recognized him as one of the boys who'd been outside the school. The kid's casual attitude made Jack's job easier, but it also made his heart ache. These were someone's children, lost to Rico's influence. Jack waited for the security light to flicker again before moving. In 3 swift steps, he was behind the guard. One arm wrapped around the boy's chest while his other hand clamped over his mouth. "I don't want to hurt you," Jack whispered, his voice gravelly but kind. "Just sleep for a while." He applied pressure to the side of the guard's neck, an old police technique. The boy slumped quietly, and Jack lowered him gently behind some crates. Inside, the warehouse smelled of dust and motor oil. Metal walkways crisscrossed the ceiling, and old machinery cast strange shadows. Jack's boots, wrapped in cloth to muffle his steps, made no sound on the concrete floor. He could hear voices echoing from somewhere deeper in the building. A door creaked nearby. Jack pressed himself against a wall as footsteps approached. 2 men walked past, talking about a late-night food delivery. Jack waited until they rounded the corner before continuing down the hallway. He found the stairs to the upper level and climbed carefully, testing each step. At the top, he encountered another guard, this one more alert, with a hand resting on his weapon. Jack didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, using his momentum to slam the man against the wall before he could shout. A quick series of precise strikes, and the guard joined his colleague in unconsciousness. Through a grimy window, Jack spotted movement in an office at the far end of the walkway. His heart skipped. He caught a glimpse of Lily's red sweater. She was alive. Tears pricked at his eyes, but he blinked them away. "Focus. Stay sharp." 2 more guards blocked his path. Jack took a deep breath, centering himself. He remembered his training. Use their size against them. Stay calm. Be efficient. The first guard went down with a sweep to the legs and a controlled fall that knocked the wind from his lungs. The second managed to throw a punch, but Jack deflected it, turning the man's momentum into a takedown that ended with a quiet thud. Finally, he reached the office door. Through the window, he saw Lily tied to a chair, her head bowed. Jack's hands trembled as he picked the lock, a skill he'd hoped never to use again. The door opened with a soft click. Lily's head snapped up at the sound. Her eyes widened, brimming with tears. "Daddy?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm here, baby girl." Jack rushed to her side, working on the ropes binding her wrists. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, crying quietly. "I knew you'd come. I knew it." The ropes fell away, and Lily threw her arms around his neck. Jack held her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. For a moment, the world narrowed to just this, his daughter, safe in his arms. How touching. The cold voice froze Jack's blood. He turned slowly, keeping Lily behind him. Rico stood in the doorway, a pistol trained steadily on Jack's chest. The drug dealer's expensive jacket and carefully styled hair couldn't hide the predator beneath. "Detective Malone." Rico's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Thought you were dead." Rico's cold metal pressed against Lily's temple, making her whimper. The warehouse air hung thick with dust and fear. Jack's hands trembled slightly as he raised them, showing they were empty. "Well, well," Rico sneered, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "The legendary Detective Malone. Not so tough now, are you?" His grip tightened on Lily's arm, making her wince. Jack's throat felt dry. Every fiber of his being screamed to rush forward, but he forced himself to stay still. One wrong move could cost everything. "Let her go, Rico. She's innocent in all this. Take me instead." "Dad, no." Lily's voice cracked with fear. Rico laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Sweet offer, but I think I like this better. Watching you suffer." He pressed the gun harder against Lily's head. "How does it feel, Detective? Being helpless? Watching someone you love in danger?" Jack took a careful step forward, his voice steady despite the terror in his heart. "I'll do anything you want. Name it. Just let my daughter go." "Anything?" Rico's eyes glinted in the dim light. "How about you get down on your knees? Beg for her life?" Without hesitation, Jack dropped to his knees. The concrete floor bit into his legs, but he didn't flinch. "Please," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "She's all I have." Something flickered across Rico's face. Surprise, maybe even respect, but it quickly hardened again. The mighty Detective Malone, reduced to begging. If only your old partners could see you now. Movement caught Jack's eye, a shadow shifting behind some crates. His heart skipped a beat when he recognized Marcus's lean frame. The boy he'd been mentoring at the hardware store was here, wearing Rico's crew colors. But something in Marcus's stance told Jack he wasn't here to help his boss. Rico didn't notice Marcus. He was too focused on Jack, enjoying his moment of power. "You know what's funny? You thought you could change things. Save the neighborhood with your little church program. But you can't save anyone, just like you couldn't save those people years ago." The words cut deep, but Jack held Rico's gaze. "You're right. I couldn't save them. But I can try to save you." Rico blinked, thrown off by the unexpected response. In that split second of confusion, Marcus emerged from the shadows, bumping into a stack of empty drums. The noise startled Rico, making him turn slightly. It was all Jack needed. He lunged forward, one hand knocking the gun upward while the other pulled Lily away. The gun went off, the shot echoing through the warehouse as it hit the ceiling. Lily scrambled free, running toward Marcus, who quickly pulled her behind some crates. Rico and Jack grappled for the weapon. Despite being older, Jack's training kicked in. He twisted Rico's wrist sharply, forcing him to drop the gun. It clattered across the floor, spinning away into the shadows. They separated, both breathing hard. Rico pulled a knife from his belt, slashing wildly. Jack dodged, his movements fluid despite years away from action. He caught Rico's wrist mid-strike, using the younger man's momentum against him. They crashed into a stack of boxes, sending them tumbling. When they rolled apart, Jack came up with Rico's knife. The drug dealer lay sprawled on his back, defenseless. Jack stood over him, blade raised, every muscle tense with the urge to end it. Rico stared up at him, fear finally breaking through his tough facade. "Do it," he spat, but his voice trembled. "Prove you're just like me." Jack's hand shook. He could do it. Part of him wanted to. The part that remembered every threat, every moment of terror, when Lily was missing. But then he heard her voice from behind the crates. "Dad?" The sound cut through his rage like a beam of light through darkness. He looked at Rico again. Really looked at him. Past the swagger and violence, he saw something familiar. A lost soul. Someone's child who had taken wrong turns. "No," Jack said, lowering the knife. "This ends here, Rico. You don't have to be this man." Rico's eyes widened in genuine shock. "What? You're better than this. We both are." Jack tossed the knife aside. It skittered across the floor, coming to rest in a patch of moonlight from the high windows. Rico stayed on the ground, staring at Jack as if seeing him for the first time. His tough exterior crumbled, revealing something vulnerable underneath. Slowly, his shoulders began to shake. In the distance, police sirens began to wail, growing louder by the second. Their haunting sound filled the warehouse, but neither man moved. Rico remained on his knees, tears now flowing freely down his face as years of buried pain surfaced. Jack stood watch, his stance protective rather than threatening. Behind the crates, Lily held onto Marcus's arm, both teenagers watching in stunned silence as their worlds shifted on their axis. The sirens grew closer, their urgent cry promising both ending and beginning. Blue and red lights began to flash through the warehouse windows, painting everything in alternating colors of justice and mercy. The first rays of dawn painted the warehouse district in shades of gold and pink. Jack cradled Lily in his arms as he emerged through the heavy metal doors, her face buried against his chest. She felt so light, just like when she was little. His muscles ached from the fight, but he barely noticed. His daughter was safe, and that was all that mattered. Police cars surrounded the building, their lights still flashing against the morning sky. Officers rushed past them, weapons drawn, securing the scene. The sound of boots on concrete and radio chatter filled the air. Lily's fingers clutched his shirt tightly, her body trembling. "Daddy," she whispered between sobs. "I knew you'd come. I just knew it." Jack pressed his lips to the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. His own tears threatened to fall, but he held them back. "I'll always come for you, baby girl. Always." Frank Delaney stood by his patrol car, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile. As Jack approached, the older man's eyes grew misty. "Welcome back, Detective," Frank said softly, reaching out to squeeze Jack's shoulder. The simple gesture carried years of shared history and understanding. Paramedics hurried forward with a blanket, but Lily refused to let go of her father. "Please," she pleaded, "don't leave me." "I'm right here," Jack assured her, accepting the blanket and wrapping it around her shoulders himself. "I'm not going anywhere." The morning air grew thick, with voices as news vans began arriving, reporters spilling out with cameras and microphones. Jack turned away, using his body to shield Lily from their prying lenses. The last thing she needed was more attention. "Mr. Malone, can you tell us what happened inside? Is it true you're a former detective? How did you find your daughter?" The questions came rapid fire, but Jack ignored them all. His focus remained solely on Lily, on getting her somewhere safe and quiet. Through the growing crowd, Pastor Ray pushed his way forward, his face etched with concern and relief. When he reached them, he wrapped both Jack and Lily in a fierce embrace. "Praise God," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This is nothing short of a miracle." Lily lifted her head slightly at the familiar voice. "Pastor Ray," she whispered. The whole congregation has been praying non-stop, dear one, the pastor said gently. The Lord heard our prayers. Jack felt the truth of those words deep in his soul. After years of doubting, of carrying his guilt alone, he'd finally remembered what it meant to have faith, not just in God, but in community, in the power of mercy over vengeance. Frank stepped closer, his voice low. The scene's secure. Rico and his crew are in custody. You should get her home now, Jack. She's been through enough. Jack nodded gratefully. Thanks, Frank. For everything. Just doing my job? Frank replied with a slight smile. Like you taught me, all those years ago. Pastor Ray squeezed Jack's arm. Take her home. Rest. The church will handle everything else. We'll make sure no reporters bother you. Jack carried Lily to his pickup truck, which sat where he'd left it hours ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. Carefully, he helped her into the passenger seat, making sure the blanket stayed wrapped around her shoulders. As he walked around to the driver's side, the sun finally broke through the clouds completely, washing everything in warm light. The warehouse district's usual grimness transformed, looking almost beautiful in the morning glow. Jack started the engine, glancing at his daughter. She'd stopped crying, but her eyes were red and puffy. Still, there was strength there, the same strength he'd seen in her mother. Ready to go home, sweetheart? Lily nodded, reaching for his hand. He squeezed it gently, then put the truck in gear. They pulled away from the warehouse, leaving behind the flashing lights and chaos. The reporters scrambled to follow, but Frank and several other officers moved to block their path. As they drove through the quiet streets, the sunlight streamed through the windshield, warming their faces. The shadows of the night were fading, replaced by the promise of a new day. Lily leaned against her father's shoulder, her breathing finally steady and calm. The familiar houses of their neighborhood came into view, and Jack felt the tension in his shoulders begin to ease. They were almost home. The morning light caught the stained glass windows of their church as they passed, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the dashboard. Dad? Lily's voice was small but clear. Yes, baby? Thank you for finding me. For not giving up. Jack swallowed hard against the lump in his throat. I could never give up on you, Lily. Never. The sunlight grew stronger as they turned onto their street, breaking through the last of the morning clouds. It spilled across their front yard, making the dew on the grass sparkle like diamonds. Home had never looked more beautiful. The afternoon sun warmed the baseball diamond as Jack Malone adjusted Marcus's grip on the bat. Keep your elbow up, he said, demonstrating the proper stance. That's it. Now you're ready. A dozen teenagers spread across the field, their faces eager and attentive. Some wore borrowed gloves, others brand new ones donated by the community. The outreach program had grown beyond anyone's expectations in the weeks since that night at the warehouse. Marcus nodded, his eyes focused on the pitcher's mound. He traded his old hoodie for a proper team jersey, and the change wasn't just on the outside. There was a new confidence in his stance, a purpose in his movements that made Jack's heart swell with pride. Remember what we talked about, Jack called out to the whole team. It's not about winning, it's about supporting each other, being there when someone needs you. From the bleachers, Lily watched the practice while sorting through sheet music. Her choir group would be meeting right after baseball practice, a schedule they'd worked out to accommodate both activities. Every so often, she'd glance up to catch her father in action, marveling at how natural he looked in this role. The crack of the bat sent the ball soaring. Marcus dropped the bat and ran, his feet kicking up dust as he rounded first base. The outfielders scrambled to catch the ball, working together just as Jack had taught them. There was laughter, shouting, and the pure joy of play, sounds that had been too rare in this neighborhood before. After practice, Jack gathered the team for their usual wrap-up talk. Great hustle out there today, everyone. Marcus, that hit was something else. He paused, looking at each young face before him. You know, someone once told me that life is a lot like baseball. Sometimes you strike out, sometimes you hit a home run, but what matters most is getting back up to bat. The teens nodded, some nudging each other with knowing looks. They'd all heard pieces of Jack's story by now. Not the sanitized version, but the real one. He'd made sure of that, speaking honestly about his past as an undercover detective, about his failures and his redemption. Coach, Marcus spoke up, my mom wanted me to thank you. She says I'm like a different person now. Jack squeezed the boy's shoulder. You always had it in you, Marcus. Sometimes we just need someone to believe in us first. As the team dispersed, Lily approached with her guitar case. "Dad, we need to run through that new song before choir practice. Do you have a minute?" "For you? Always." Jack helped her set up in the small classroom they used for choir practice. The walls, once bare, now displayed artwork from the teens in the program and photos from their baseball games and performances. Lily strummed a few chords, her fingers moving with growing confidence. "Remember when I used to be scared to sing in front of people?" she asked, smiling. "Look at you now," Jack said proudly, "leading the whole choir." "I think I understand now," Lily said, her voice soft. "Why, you kept your past hidden for so long. You were trying to protect me." Jack leaned against the desk, meeting his daughter's eyes. "I was wrong about that part, though. Hiding the truth only created distance between us. Your mother, she always said that honesty was the foundation of love." "Tell me about the case again," Lily requested, setting her guitar aside. "The one that made you leave detective work." Jack took a deep breath. He told her this story several times now, each telling a little easier than the last. "I was deep undercover in a drug operation. Made a call that got 2 young informants killed. They were just kids, really, not much older than you. After that, I couldn't face myself in the mirror anymore. But look at how many kids you're helping now," Lily said, gesturing to the photos on the wall. "Mom would be so proud of you." The mention of her mother brought warmth to Jack's chest.
"She'd be proud of both of us, baby girl."
Other teens began filing in for choir practice, including several from the baseball team. The room filled with chatter and laughter as they took their places. Lily moved to the front, natural and confident in her leadership role. "Okay, everyone," she called out. "Let's warm up. Remember what we're singing on Sunday." Jack watched from the doorway as his daughter led the group through their scales. The transformation in her was remarkable, not just in her music, but in her spirit. The fear and uncertainty that had shadowed her eyes after the kidnapping had been replaced by a steady light of purpose. Later that week, Jack sat in the church pew, watching Lily step up to the microphone. The morning light streamed through the stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across her face. The congregation fell silent as she adjusted her guitar strap. From his seat, Jack could see Marcus and several other teens from the baseball team sitting together, their usual tough exteriors softened by the moment. The church was fuller than he'd ever seen it, packed with families who'd been touched by the outreach program. Lily's fingers found the first chord, and her voice rose clear and strong, filling the sacred space with hope. Jack felt tears prick at his eyes, remembering how her mother used to sing this same hymn. But for the first time, the memory brought more joy than pain. In his daughter's voice, in the faces of the teens he coached, in the warmth of this community that had embraced them, Jack found something he thought he'd lost forever: redemption. Not the kind that erased the past, but the kind that transformed it into something beautiful and new. Pastor Ray caught his eye from the pulpit and nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they'd all witnessed. Jack nodded back, his heart full to bursting as Lily's song soared to the rafters, carrying with it the promise of healing, of second chances, of love that never gave up. The summer evening painted Hope Valley's town square in golden hues as families gathered for the neighborhood celebration. Paper lanterns swayed in the gentle breeze, strung between lampposts like twinkling stars. The scent of cotton candy and grilled hot dogs drifted through the air, mixing with the sound of children's laughter and live music from the makeshift stage. Jack Malone walked hand in hand with Lily, both of them pausing every few steps to greet neighbors. He couldn't help but marvel at how different things felt now. Just months ago, these same streets had been shadowed by fear. Now, they buzzed with life and community spirit. "Dad, look." Lily pointed to a large banner stretched across Main Street. The words, "Neighborhood Renewal Celebration," fluttered in bright colors against the backdrop of the setting Sunday. "Can you believe how many people showed up?" Jack squeezed her hand, taking in the scene. Marcus and several other teens from the baseball team were helping younger kids at the face painting station. Pastor Ray chatted with former gang members who now attended his youth group. Even Frank, the retired officer, had shown up in civilian clothes, manning the grill with a cheerful grin. "Mr. Malone," a young mother approached with her daughter, "we just wanted to thank you again. The neighborhood feels so safe now. My little girl can actually play outside again." Jack nodded humbly. It wasn't just me. It was all of us standing together. More people gathered around, sharing similar stories. A grandfather talked about how his grandson had quit dealing drugs and started attending technical college. A shop owner mentioned how business had improved now that people weren't afraid to walk the streets at night. Pastor Ray approached the stage, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted. "We have someone special who'd like to say a few words. Jack, would you come up here?" Lily gave her father a gentle push. "Go on, Dad. They want to hear from you." Jack hadn't planned on speaking, but as he walked to the stage, words formed in his heart. He looked out at the sea of familiar faces, people who had become more than neighbors. They were family now. "A few months ago," he began, his voice steady and warm, "I made a choice to stand up against something wrong. I said 2 words that somehow went viral. Back off now." A ripple of knowing laughter moved through the crowd. "But standing up isn't about threats or force. It's about love." He paused, finding Lily's proud smile in the audience. "Love is what transforms a neighborhood. Love is what gives kids second chances. Love is what makes us brave enough to reach out instead of turning away." His eyes met Marcus's, who stood straighter at the acknowledgement. "Every one of you showed that kind of love. You opened your homes for youth meetings. You donated sports equipment. You offered jobs to kids who needed a fresh start. The setting sun cast long shadows across the square, but the warmth in people's faces outshone any darkness. This celebration isn't about what we overcame. It's about what we're building together. A community where nobody has to face their struggles alone." Applause erupted, genuine and heartfelt. As Jack stepped down, people reached out to pat his shoulder or shake his hand. Lily wrapped him in a tight hug. "That was perfect, Dad," she whispered. The sky darkened to deep blue, and Pastor Ray announced it was time for the lantern release. Volunteers handed out paper lanterns, their delicate frames cradling small flames that would soon lift them into the night sky. Jack and Lily found a quiet spot near the old oak tree. Their lantern glowed between them, warming their faces as they held it together. The moment reminded Jack of countless evenings with Lily's mother, teaching their daughter to pray. That same sacred feeling filled his chest now. "Ready?" he asked softly. Lily nodded, her eyes shining with tears of joy. "Ready." All around them, families prepared their lanterns. Pastor Ray counted down, 3, 2, 1. As they released their grip, Jack leaned close to Lily's ear. "You know, back off now wasn't just a warning," he whispered, watching their lantern begin its ascent. "It was the beginning of hope." Their lantern joined dozens of others, rising like golden stars into the velvet night. Lily slipped her arm around her father's waist, and they stood together, bathed in the warm glow of the ascending lights. Their lantern drifted higher, carrying with it the promise of new beginnings and the strength of a community united in love. The moment captured everything they'd fought for. Not just safety, but connection. Not just peace, but purpose. In the gentle summer night, surrounded by the family they'd found in their neighbors, Jack and Lily shared a smile that spoke of healing, hope, and the unbreakable bond between father and daughter. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Jack Malone, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please, don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.